applications with Expo is incredibly easy, but at the same time also kind of confusing. Let's talk about all the ways how you can build your React Native application with Expo, including local builds, EAS, Android Studio, Xcode, and everything that you can do. Hey everyone, what's up? Simon back here with another tutorial on clarifying what you can do with Expo in your... However, what if you want to use something like React Native Vision Camera or some other package with native modules that is not included in this app? Well, then you have to turn to something else, and that is what we're going to talk about in the second step. So it's really important to understand that Expo Go is a great way to quickly spin up your application. It is okay for using it while testing. You can use it like the complete time if you're only using the Expo SDKs and modules here. Then it's completely cool. However, there's also another downside right now. Since Expo SDK 50 or 51, there's only one version for stuff where pre-build comes into play. So Expo pre-build basically means it will take the information you've specified in your app.json. There might be a block about plugins. It might include some native settings, some config plugins, and then you generate an actual native project. This usually works like this. So let's stop this here, and we do npx expo pre-build. We don't have to follow this up with anything. This usually now asks us, okay, what would you like to name your package? This is the bundle ID. We'll just stick to the default here. Same for iOS. And then it will create native folders for Android and iOS based on our application. Now, here things get a bit more complicated because you can now launch them through Android Studio, Xcode. You can continue to use the Expo CLI. There's the term continuous native generation. So there's a lot already going on after you leave the comfort of the Expo Go application. But bear with me, we're going to walk through this. So now that you have these Android and iOS folders, the easiest way to run your application is going ahead with npx expo run, and then follow this up with either Android or iOS. So I will just do npx expo run iOS. I will also now close this so we see what's going on. We don't need this right now.
Hi guys, let's learn together how to become a remote worker and earn up to a...
By the way, if you run no npx pre-build and just run npx expo run iOS, it will actually also on the first run do a pre-build of your project. So it's kind of the same. And this might take a while because now we are actually building our own native application that will be built to our device. So let's wait until this is finished. All right, so the build finished and we kind of see the same output. It looks like we're still using the Expo Go application or what's going on, but notice the difference. We are now using a development build. So this is an important term. There you can actually still, so I can change something and it quickly changes. I launched this and I did not launch the Expo Go application. And that means on my device, I also now lost the connection. If I wanted to also deploy this to a device, I won't have to follow up the command, so I don't want to mess up the command. Let's do a new terminal, npx run iOS -- device. Then I could build straight to my connected device. And by the way, this should now also work over the network, so you don't even have to connect your device to your computer. One caveat also that I want to quickly mention is I'm running this here on a Mac, and you need a Mac to do a pre-build for iOS and to run this project on iOS, the simulator, like this. If you're on a Windows machine, you can only do this for Android, and you have to use EAS, which we will talk about in the end. So now we have our development build. As I said, everything's pretty much the same, but look at this. If I now press Command-Control-Z, I get the default React Native debugging menu because this is sort of a default application. It is a bit similar to what Expo Eject did in the past. You know, Expo Eject doesn't exist anymore, and pre-build is the thing that gives you the most flexibility. So at this point, I can install any kind of native module in my React Native application with Expo and use it here in my pre-build. If I want to get back this cool debugging menu, so this is also described, I have to run a new. If you install this package, your final application resembles more closely what you have seen previously in the Expo Go application. The only downside to this approach is that in general, if you install a new package, you have to do a new npx expo run iOS. Also, one more thing to be aware of is if you add a new module that changes something in your app.json, like under plugins, there's a new module, a new config plugin added that changes your native project. What you have to do is usually run again npx expo pre-build -- clean. Okay, so you don't need true or false at the end, you just need npx expo pre-build clean. This will basically wipe out your iOS and Android folders in your project and do a new clean pre-build based on everything, all the information in your app.json. In the meantime, here's the project coming up, and you see this is now using the developer menu. It gives you access to useful tools in your development build. You can open it anytime with whatever. So let's continue, and we see if I now press Control-Command-Z here, I get the dev client menu that I'm used to from the Expo Go application. So this is pretty much everything that you have to understand about Expo pre-builds. I think if you understand what Expo Go is, that is this bundled app experience with pre-configured SDK versions and plugins that you can use to quickly spin up something, and you can then opt out to do a pre-build and run npx expo run iOS or Android on the simulator or on a connected device, then you know like 80–85% about how you can build your React Native project with Expo, because usually this is now enough to debug and develop your application, because the pre-build, as I said, gives you 100% flexibility. You can install any native module, you can use config plugins and continuous native generation. As you can see here, we're still running live. This is like a live test, a live reload and hot reload of our application with Expo Run and not the Expo Go application. However, let's take things a step further now. You might be coming from Android Studio or Xcode as a native developer, and you're asking yourself, but maybe I just want to run it through these tools. How could I do that? Good question. I'm here to show you exactly this. So as I said, we do have an Android and iOS folder after doing our pre-build. So the pre-build is kind of like the prerequisite to do what we do now. What I want to do is I would actually like to open this. I previously could really open this this folder right here. Let's reveal it in the Finder. And then I will open the XC workspace. So this is a traditional Xcode project. Now, let's see what can we do. We can deploy this to the iPhone 15 Pro. I can do a run up here. And of course, at the same time, we could launch Android Studio. And within Android Studio, we could do something similar. Actually, I will open Android Studio because it takes like ages to trust that project. And then let's put the build your application to our local Expo start again. --dev client. I don't know if I need that. I will just do npx expo for the moment. If I do this and I fetch this, we see now I can select my build again. I can connect, and my app is working straight through Xcode. Okay, what did we just do? Well, we just built the application, the React Native application through Xcode, but this app is still pointing to our local Metro server, which means it's pulling out the stuff here, and we have live reload and hot reload and refresh and whatnot. But what if I kill this? What if I want to install this application on a device of a friend? I can't, because I deploy it and then I see this. It's not really what I want. So if you want, I think they called it previously a standalone application that I can just like build on the iPhone of my wife, then I would have to go into Xcode, and now it gets a bit more challenging. So you have to now edit your scheme. You have to edit the scheme, and you have to go check here the build configuration. Right now it's set to debug. I will now set this to release, and I will close this. And then I will run this again to my simulator. Okay, so this is now building again. Hopefully it's not failing, and we're just gonna wait for a moment. And then we're gonna see what happens here to our iOS build. All right, so this build took really long, like about 5 minutes. I'm gonna pretty this project. If I change something in here, finally submit to the iOS App Store. At this point, I could also now go ahead and run a product archive and do an archive build of this and upload the IPA. I do get a problem because, yeah, I haven't selected my signing, so we have to go here and select signing identity, then I would sign, and then I could finally do, what is the shortcut for an archive? Wasn't there like a shortcut? Did they remove that? Anyway. So this is the release build that I could build to some application that is not using a local development server, but has really bundled everything inside. I don't want to do this again. Not again, please don't do this again. Okay, so the thing about this is that if I now do changes here, if I like change the minimum deployment target or the display name, and if I later refresh the project with pre-build, these settings would be removed. So be careful about applying changes right here in Xcode. The recommended approach is usually that you put out a config plugin and include it in your app.json. So if you're using continuous native generation, CNG, that stuff is automatically applied to your Xcode or Android projects when you do a pre-build, and then you have everything of the configuration again. So if you have something like minimum deployment target or things, you include that in your app.json. Okay, that's everything for the moment about Xcode. This should give you all the information you need to make a pre-build, deploy it to your simulator or device, and even do a release build. And if you want to submit your app straight through Xcode, the classic way of building an iOS application and then handling the rest in App Store Connect. Now, let's talk about Android. At this point, hopefully my application is finished here. I also brought up my emulator device, so I do have a virtual device. You can find some guides on the internet on how to create your virtual device if you don't have one. And then I will simply hit play here, or whatever that button means, which will build my Android React Native Expo application to my emulator or whatever device that I select up here. However, we're going to run into the same trouble that we had with iOS, which means this, in the default case, is using a development instance, which means we have to do npx expo to spin up my local server. To spin up Metro, yeah, I should probably clean this. I don't know why I sometimes get this. It's not really causing any problems, but it looks so ugly that I just want to get rid of it. So let's do npx expo again. This will start this. It is using, once again, a development build. And meanwhile, we see my app here on the emulator. Let's close this one behind this. And I'll select my server. We see it's loading here. And I do get my live development environment. Okay, so here we go, Android, quick change, and it of course instantly changes in my emulator, or if I would deploy this to a connected device. Good. I don't want to zoom default build. It's instantly doing this. Isn't there not like a dialog coming up? Well, yeah, if you do a generate signed bundle, then you go through the process. Okay. So you could now, through Android Studio, create an APK, create a bundle file in the usual way with the key store files and yada, yada, yada. I think that procedure, it should be pretty clear for the people who want to use this. Now, a few more things and notes on these process and what we can do as well. So if you don't want to go into these tools, you don't really have to. First of all, what we did in Xcode can be replaced by a command if we use npx expo run iOS. We had that part before, but if you pass in the configuration release, it's doing pretty much the same like changing our scheme. And we could also follow this up with dash dash device if we now wanted to build this on our device. And cool thing, it's coming up with my devices here. Pretty cool. Same thing is almost true for Android. So for Android, what you could do is npx expo run Android and then using dash dash variant release. Okay, instead of configuration release on Android, it's usually called a variant. Then you would build your release variant. And this one actually built my release through Android Studio, pretty nice. So here we go. I do have an app release AAB that I can drag into my my Android device. Okay, so this is the way how we could do the same things that we just did with Xcode and Android Studio straight through the Expo CLI. Finally, I just want to mention that if you like to do this stuff, you could also do something like cd Android and then do Gradle, let's see, Gradle and then assemble release. I think there's like a command to also get like everything. If I just do Gradle, does it show me like all the possible commands? There's one to use application. So using Android Studio, using Xcode, and using the available tools to build your app, which just shows you don't have to use EAS, but it can dramatically simplify how you build your React Native application. So EAS Build is a hosted service for building app binaries for your Expo and React Native projects. The first time I got in contact with Expo and looked up how to build stuff, I quickly got into EAS and then local builds of EAS, and everything looked so confusing. So that's why I wanted to show you all the other things of Expo Go and Expo as login, and you have to install the EAS CLI. So yeah, it should be EAS-CLI. So now let me log in here. Logging in also means, of course, that you do need an account, but you can create one for free at expo.dev. Once you are logged in, you can run EAS build configure. So that configures our local project, okay? Would you like to automatically create an EAS project in your account? Yes, I do want this. So this is now creating my app in the dashboard right here. So if I go under projects, what did I call this right now? I think I called this Expo build, right? At least I hope so. Okay, which platform would you like to configure? Let's say all. Alrighty then, your project is ready to build. It generated an EAS JSON. We're gonna have to look at that in a second. And I can now run EAS build when you're ready to create your first build. Alright, let's first of all check out the EAS JSON. So this is a file that just specifies a few things about our project and how Expo can now build our Android and iOS application in the cloud. If you now want to build for iOS, let's talk about this. First of all, there's a block that you can add to your EAS.json. So for Android, this is quite easy. If you want an Android emulator build, for iOS, we need this little block usually. So let's put this, we installed in the beginning, you should know understand. Form iOS is in the cloud on the Expo servers that are higher tier of that queue. If I check out Expo build here, what is this? You didn't like my command? What's your problem? EAS build, yeah, whatever. Okay, so it's uploading my stuff to EAS. Build details are here. I want to open that page. Let's take a look. And you can now observe what you find. However, if you now want to add your devices, you also have to run some commands to run EAS device create. Should I do this? Maybe we're going to do this. EAS device create. So I can now, yes, I want that account. And then I want to log into my team, and I want, let's say I want a website. This is quite interesting because on iOS, it's quite hard to like publish your application for testing to other people. You usually need profiles and certificates and include devices and their UUIDs in those profiles. So in order to make this easier, there are different ways to set this up. Allows you to manually input IDs. You can have like import stuff from the developer portal, or what I really like is a website. So I can now go to this website right here, and I could just scan this, and it would easily install. So installing the provisioning profile would work just by scanning this code with my device. So this is pretty cool in a nice way. Once again, a simplification from Expo to get testing devices into your iOS program. Now, okay, my cloud build is running. We're going to check it out once it is finished. What we can do as well is use the settings from EAS, but do a local build. The idea here is that if you do a local build with EAS, you can basically test how your app would be built on the Expo EAS servers. On top of that, I mean, it builds your application, you get a nice output of that. So it is a bit easier if you're like limited, if you have a free account, then you can still do this locally. Again, coming back to what I said earlier, if you want to develop your own Fastline stuff, but why would you do this if you could just use EAS or other tools? So this is Expo. Nice, we're already installing the pods. I'm on a high priority queue today. And this, what's going on here is exactly the same thing. So yeah, select devices. I've included all the devices. Would you like to set up push notifications? No, don't want this again. So after a lot of questions, it will finally build my application. And then it will do the same stuff as I said that's doing here. It's using Fastlane in the background. You can also configure your own Fastlane stuff, but why would you do this if you could just use EAS or other tools? So this is Expo EAS explained for iOS. As you've seen, we can do it locally. We just need to configure the project ones, or we can build in the cloud, which of course gives you access to a lot more things. You can connect your accounts, your App Store Connect account to EAS, which means the build is in the cloud. It will get submitted to App Store Connect, and it's just a lot easier to make new releases of your application. So for everyone who's doing frequent updates, for every company that's doing frequent updates, the statistics in the already can see happens right here, and then you have your IPA file that you can deploy to an iOS device if you want to share it like this. Okay, this is my local EAS build. At the same time, I also ran the cloud build. For whatever reason, that failed, and it failed at an upload task to Google API. So I definitely didn't want to upload my archive in the first place, so I don't know why this failed. Anyway, I'm going to show you something that succeeded in a second. Also, in the meantime, what I did is Sneaky Simon ran the same command for Android. So we do see if I go to development build of my project, I have an Android internal build as well going on. It's currently building, it's running Gradle, prepared the credentials. So probably in a minute, we should see my APK file that I could download here as well. However, I did this upfront to test things. And of course, here in the showcase, I have this finished. So if you successfully do these things, you can usually see something like this. You get a download here. I can download this, would give me a tar file. And of course, the same here for Android. I could install this just with a QR code, with a link, really doing a lot of easy stuff. However, both also have this button to open with Orbit. So if you're interested in Expo Orbit, you can read about this right here. It's a cool extension that you can install for Mac and Windows, and then you can like directly run a build on your device. When I click Expo Orbit here, you don't see it. I can select a build from EAS, but it's kind of boring. So just check this out yourself. But with Orbit, you can now directly deploy this EAS build to your simulator, to your devices, and it makes things once again a bit easier. So regarding EAS, you need to configure your project with EAS, then you need to sometimes create devices and upload credentials, and then you can build or both connect them to apps, but experimentally don't promote Egghead. Once you use your own native, really, there's a whole lot more to EAS, so let me know